Hey, why don't we continue with our breakout tutorial, and let's take a look and see where we're at so far. So I'm going to open this up in VS Code, and what we've done is we've taken the original game code, we've updated it, and in the last episode we started creating classes for the objects in the game. Okay, so I've made the ball class, I've given it some properties, and I've given it a render method, and I'm passing the canvas context into the render method because this is a dependency. Like, in order to render itself, it needs to have a reference to the context, right? And we're going to follow that same pattern with the other objects. So for example, the brick object here has some properties and a render method, and it takes in the canvas context as a parameter. So an interesting idea here is that we're going to use the same name render for the method of ball and for the brick, right? And all the objects will follow this same pattern. This is an idea, we'll call it polymorphism. So, one of these objects could stand in for another object, right? They share the same method and it works the same way. They may draw themselves differently, but they're calling the method will produce the same results with the same parameters, right? Okay, so we made a brick object. Let's tackle making a bricks object. So the bricks object is, it's got the S on the end, so it's a little bit different. It's like a container that holds a lot of bricks, right? So this is going to be responsible for, creating that array of bricks, right? The two-dimensional array. So let's go find the code that does that. So I had originally put it here in this, I made an array here for bricks, and then I put the code that initializes the array in this initialize bricks method. Okay, so let's copy. Actually, we can cut this out of here. Maybe delete this guy, and I will just get rid of that too. Okay. And we'll move it all into a class up here. So we'll say class bricks, and this will have a constructor. And then I'm going to give it an init method. So this will be equivalent to that initialize bricks function. So let me get rid of a couple of those curly braces there. And what is up with the linter here? It wants me to use this in here, so we'll fix that in a moment. Okay, so imagine, when we create bricks will have a number of columns and a number of rows. Okay, and when we initialize a bricks object, what we'll do is we'll say, const bricks, that's lowercase, equals new bricks. Okay, and I have those constants up above for brick column count, and so that'll be our first parameter to set the columns here, and then I'll put in brick row count as the second parameter. Okay, and we might even pass in the brick width and height and the brick padding and some of those things, because having these as global variables that are used in here is not a good idea, but maybe I'll go and fix that last. And what I want to do is I'm going to say this dot columns equals columns, so that my class owns the number of columns, and then I'll say this dot rows equals the rows that was passed in as the parameter, and now my class will own the number of rows. Okay, great. So now I've got this init method that actually sets up the array. So actually, we need to have the array too. So let's say bricks. This might be a little weird because, to access the bricks array, we would be typing, bricks.bricks, right? So that's a little weird, but but I think it's okay. So we'll set up our array. So we'll initialize it here. Actually, maybe we could even put that in the init method. I think I'm going to just do it here though, right? But what we want to do is, for this bricks object to set itself up, it needs to run all this code here. it needs to loop over all the bricks and then create bricks and add them to the array. So what we'll do is we'll say this dot init, and we'll call the init method. You could call this setup, initialize, any name that reminds you of like what's happening here, which is, we're doing the work that needs to be done before our object is ready for use. Okay, so there we go. And now inside here, the column count is going to be this dot columns, and the row count will be this dot rows. And here I guess we'll get an X for a brick, a Y for a brick, and then we'll push the new brick into this bricks array. But actually this bricks array is, when we have to fix it up here and here, right? So we'll say this dot bricks, right? Because this is the bricks array that's owned by this class, right? And then we'll make our new bricks. Now that we've made this new bricks object, maybe we can give it a render method, right? So I'll give it render. And essentially what's going to happen here is we're going to loop over all the bricks and then call render on each of those bricks. Okay, so the render method should take in the canvas context as a dependency. And we already have some code to draw the bricks over here. So what I'll do is I'll cut that out of here and I'll move it into the render method for bricks. So here's our bricks class, and there's the render method, and I'll paste this here. And oh yeah, we got to get rid of this function wrapper there. Fix some formatting, right? And now we're going to change these again. So we'll do this dot columns and this dot rows, and then const brick, we're going to get it from this dot bricks, and then brick dot status and brick dot render should be good. So essentially we'll just take in the context here and we'll pass it into the render for each brick in our bricks array. Okay, so we've got that, but now we actually have to use the bricks, right? So we've created an instance of bricks here, right? And what we'll need to do is, if I scroll down here and find the draw method, wherever that lives, yeah, here it is, right? So when we draw bricks, instead of calling draw bricks, we're going to say bricks with an S dot render, right? Because and then we'll pass in the context, right? Because brick is a single brick, but bricks is the group of bricks, right? So we got to make sure about that S. The names are pretty close here. Some of the names are very different, but this name in particular is very similar to another name, so we want to be careful about that one. So anyway, so we've got our bricks here, and we have a little more work to do, right? Because I made this change here. So if I look at the collision detection, this one loops over all the bricks. So this collision detection is a method that is kind of shared across the brick and the ball class, right? So what we do with this is kind of weird. Like maybe the bricks could own it, but then they would have to know about the ball. So probably the best place to put this is outside of both of those classes, right? So in order for that to work, then right here, when we call on collision detection, we're going to have to say, bricks dot columns, right? Because it's outside of the class. And then we'd say, bricks dot rows. And then we would say, and this is where it gets a little weird, we'll say bricks dot bricks. Okay, because bricks is the class that owns an array called bricks. Okay, so we've done that, and then we'll get one brick out of the array, we'll check its status, we'll get the ball, we'll check the distance and all that stuff, And I think that's pretty good. We made a lot of changes there. There might be an error, so let's check that in our browser, right? So I'm gonna pull up the game here. I think I have it at localhost 5500. Actually, that was pretty lucky. It's still working, right? I usually expect to have an error if I make a lot of code changes like that, but it seems like it's working. So that's really good for us. And then always we should check the console, right? So I'm checking the console here and lucky me, no errors, right? Okay, so that's really good. If you got that far, that's excellent. I'll save this video and then maybe I'll make another one for each section of this, because this is actually a pretty tricky bit of refactoring. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I hope that your game is going well. And if you got any questions, please post them in the comments.